You found it? Oh, this isn't it? You don't know? Well, welcome to Two's country, where today we're following Offa's Dyke, which runs all the way down the border of England and Wales. It's a big ditch. And this might be it. Then again, it might not, because we weren't really planning on there being 9 inches of snow. Still, there's lots to see, and I'm sure we will eventually find it. Come on. This is the beautiful border town, or village, because it's both, of Clun, described by A.E. Houseman as the quietest spot under the sun, and also as the Peter Pan town, because it never quite grew up. It's still in the grid pattern of the Normans. And behind me, a stunning castle. Come and look at it. Clun is in an area known as the Marches, which has nothing to do with marshes, and has a bit to do with marching, because it's actually an old word which means an area where the boundary is often being contested. And boy, was it, for hundreds and hundreds of years between the Welsh and the English, and this is why this castle is here. It was built by William the Conqueror, or his men, to show the Welsh that he meant business, and eventually it was turned into a stone castle by the FitzAlans, but was destroyed during the Civil War between the Welsh and the English. Now I'm going to go and show you the old bridge in the village, but before I do that, there's something I've just got to do. Well, you've got to do it, haven't you? Come on. Yeah, all right. The bridge. This bridge is over 500 years old. It's a saddleback bridge, and there's definitely been one here a lot longer than that, and there was probably a ford before that. Back in 1204, this village was granted a 3-day charter to hold a fair, and at the time there were 1,000 people living in the village. Before that, even more. Nowadays, there's only 800. So as time's gone on, it's actually shrunk in size. Now, shall we go and find that dyke? Good. Well, you know a man who can, as it were. All right then, lead on. And this is it. Offa's Dyke, built by King Offa in the 8th century. And this is actually the dyke. The hill bit is the dyke, and the ditch is down here. See if it's deep. No, not very deep. There's a thought that at one time this could have been as much as 40 feet deep. But who knows what it was that long ago. Dave McGlade is from the organisation that looks after the path along Offa's Dyke and also helps preserve the dyke itself. Hi, Dave.
Hello there.
I mean, what was it? Was it a defensive line, or was it just an agreed boundary?
Basically, there's two schools of thought. An archaeologist called Cyril Fox, writing in the 1920s and 30s, he believes that it was in fact just an agreed frontier, agreed between the Welsh chiefs, the British in those days, and the Mercians in England. Whereas another archaeologist writing in the 60s and 70s, he actually says that it was in fact a defensive frontier, and there possibly would have been a wooden palisade built on the top as well.
What do you think?
Well, I prefer to sit on the fence.
Quite literally. All right, let's get over it and walk along. How long is it?
Well, the actual dyke is 80 miles, stretches of it, but the...
80 miles?
Yes, indeed. But although the footpath runs for 170 miles.
170 miles. You fancy a walk? No, I didn't think you would. Please yourself. I'm going for a stroll with David. It's a beautiful day for it.
It's wonderful, isn't it?
Absolutely gorgeous.
Right. It's a good day for us.
Well, you won't see it any finer than this, I wouldn't have thought. See that? It's the Green Price Memorial. Built by Green Price. Who was a rich geezer. Now then, I've had enough of Offa's Dyke for the moment. I managed a couple of miles, except for one final thought. Do you know there's another theory to how it was built? The devil ploughed it in just one night. There we are. Walcott Hall in Walcott. Isn't this absolutely stunning? What? Just a minute. Yeah, I know. Yes, Lord Clive of India. Actually, it's not. It's Keith Pybus, who runs an organisation that likes to keep the memory of Clive of India alive. Hi, Keith. How do you do? Looking resplendent. Wonderful stuff.
Thank you.
Now, Clive actually lived here, didn't he?
Yes, it's rather like winning the national lottery. He came back after his third trip to India, the richest man in the country. And I always say he didn't have much left to aspire to, so he decided he might like to be Prime Minister. Fortunately, because there was no democracy, little places like Bishop's Castle, known as the rottenest borough in the country, had 2 MPs and 8 electors. So this was quite a bargain for Clive. He bought the place and got a couple of MPs into the bargain. When you think he was also buying perhaps another 4 or 5 houses like this, sometimes only 1 MP coming with them, he was well on the way to creating a major political party.
Astonishing, isn't it? He was on a pension of about 25 million.
Yes, I suppose if you had installed somebody as the ruler of half a continent like India, you'd expect a fair pension as well, in recompense. He also got his pick of some pretty nice jewels.
Yes, it's a pie on a plate. I think he wants to know why you're holding that, Keith.
This is Clive's further achievement. He was the only Englishman that ever taught the French anything about food. During a 3-month stay in the town of Pézenas, the south of France, he gave them the recipe for what is an 18th century mince pie.
Leave it. Put it down.
And the French, food lovers as they are, have carefully protected, preserved this food. They now make 150,000 of these pies a year. And so we've re-imported them to Market Drayton, thinking they've been so lovingly looked after. We've named a pub after Clive and the pie, which is called a coffin. So you can now eat the very pies that Clive of India was eating in 1768.
Marvellous stuff. A wonderful eccentric. We meet loads of them, don't we? Just a few miles on from Walcott Hall is this beautifully historic town of Bishop's Castle. There was indeed a castle up at the top, but it's long since gone. Now these are the burgage plots that were laid out coming down from the castle by the Normans. Long, thin plots of land with a gap either side known as shuts. And they were laid out to encourage people to settle here, to produce food, to sell it, and give some tax to the owner of the castle. Now, this one, which has been altered since about the 1500s, you see the markings that the carpenter has put on there. That's to show that those 2 pieces of wood go together, and there are similar markings on all of the junctions. And that's because these fronts were actually built in the builder's yard, brought here, assembled, and then the whole lot was pulled up on a rope. The whole of the front was put up like that. And this one has a fine example of a jetty, one of the best you'll see, and it's held up by these 2 posts, and that's why this house is known as the House on Crutches, and it's Bishop Castle's museum, the House on Crutches Museum. Beautiful. Have you seen the tree? No, look at the tree properly. It's a special tree. Go over there and look at it properly. Give me a big picture of this tree. It's a special tree because when you turn round you will see it is covered in flags. And some say it's to do with Charles II going back to the throne on the 29th of May 1660. Others say it's because a squire got married and it marks that day about 100 years later. Whatever the reason, where are you going? Whatever the reason, they have a big do here in Aston-on-Clun once a year. Oh look, forget it. You've missed the dance and the coffee morning. Some climbs are worth the effort, and this is one of them. Berry Ditches Hill Fort, which is above Clunton. In fact, it's above just about everywhere in the world, judging by the view. Stunning Iron Age fort. You can still see the outer defensive wall, the inner wall, and this is where a huge settlement lived for a long time during the millennium before Christ. Nowadays it's only populated by sheep and 2 people who are extremely impressed. Yes? Yes. Down from the great heights to this fantastic Elizabethan house called Castle Lodge in Castle Square in Ludlow. And there's a brilliant story inside. Come and meet Gwen, the owner. Gwen, tell us what you saw the first time.
Well, it all started when 2 people came downstairs and asked and told me that the cats upstairs were playing up. I must explain that these 2 rooms here were occupied by my cats when we first moved in, and I had a bed spring across the main passage there to stop them getting out and the public moving in. We're open to the public, you understand, and it's a house under restoration. Anyway, someone came and said that the poor cats were playing up, and I came bolting up that door there and started to fiddle with this door. The string is still on. I was just undoing the string on the door there for the cats to see what was wrong, and I could see someone moving about in that room. And I thought, how on earth did they get in there? So I thought I'd show them out. I was a bit annoyed. I thought somebody prowled up where they shouldn't. And I took a couple of steps down the passageway, and there was a girl there. She was coming out, and she was moving very quickly. She was running like that, running down the passageway. And I stepped out of her way as fast as I could. Well, anyone would. It's a natural reflex. Anyway, she just carried on running, straight past me, through the bed spring, into the room the other side, and I nearly died. I just stood here like a lemon. I couldn't believe it. I'd seen the impossible. I'd seen something solid go through something solid, because she's as solid as you are. Absolutely. She's got a lovely little round fat face. She's nice. She huddles, but she was wearing big red gloves with tassels on, but it was something I wasn't prepared for, and all the cats were up like dandelion clocks in there. You've never seen anything like them. Anyway, I went back downstairs eventually, and I knocked all the paint pots down. We were under restoration, and I knocked everything flying. And I got down to the ground floor, and I was trying to tell my husband that I'd just seen a pair of red gloves go through a bed spring. It just wouldn't come out right. I couldn't believe it. And 2 old ladies came over, and they started to giggle. They were Ludlow ladies, and they said, "You've seen Kate. Look in every cupboard, open every door, you won't see pretty Kate until the very top floor." One of those old ladies could remember being wheeled past this building in her pram, and her mother saying, "Shh, Kate will hear you."
And who's Kate?
Kate, well, all the locals think it's Catherine of Aragon.
Catherine of Aragon, who lived in the castle across the road.
I've often said, what's Catherine doing here when she's got a perfectly good castle to haunt over there? But she is here, and she's nice.
Yeah, okay. I've probably scared you enough. Come on in to the Feathers, a lovely old hotel where we can spend the night. Hi.
Good evening, sir.
Good
Do
evening.
you have a room book?
We do actually, yes. I was just wondering though, it's such an old hotel. Is it haunted at all?
Oh, yes, sir. Room 211 is the haunted room.
Is it? Could you give that one to him?
Oh, yes, no problem, sir. That's available.
1 minute. You'll have to fill one of these in. There you are, 211. Morning. How was last night then? What, you sat up all night? With the light on? What's that? What's this? Oh, Mum. These are the oatcakes you posted in Stoke. You don't put the marmalade on first. You idiots. Right, get your breakfast, and then I'm going to show you one of Britain's best kept treasures. This has to be one of the finest examples of a fortified manor house that you're going to find anywhere in the world. I don't care where. Stokesay Castle, beautiful little door, mind your head. Although actually it's not a castle at all. It was the home of Lawrence of Ludlow, a wealthy sheep merchant in the 13th century, who fortified his home to protect himself and also to show off a bit about how wealthy he was. He had his business in Ludlow, and yet he traded in Shrewsbury, so this was smack in the middle. Oh, what a stunning place it is. This is the oldest part, the North Tower, which is 13th century. Let's go up this rickety old staircase. It's ever so difficult to negotiate because the stairs wobble all over the place and they're very thin. But follow me, and you trip then. And these are the living quarters that date back to the 13th century up here. Not the bit over there that hangs over the moat. That came later with the windows and the leaded, but this bit that I'm in now. The wind would have howled through here, and the way you'd have kept yourself warm would be with this enormous fire. The holes up here would have had spits, and you'd have meat and all sorts hanging over that. Stunning! And through here, in those days, the way you show off your wealth, teeth right, was by having a high roof. Look how high the roof is on the Great Hall. And he was showing everyone exactly how wealthy he was. Can you imagine the dancing going on down there? The musicians up here playing for everyone? And next to the Great Hall are the solar rooms, which means main rooms. And you're already up there. What did you do? Have a look round, and then I'll tell you all about it. So, the main room, 17th century opulence this is where the Lord would entertain, dine, do business, and probably even sleep here as well. But the interesting thing is that, where are you going? That you would always have to enter the main room from outside. There would never be a door from the hall to here for security reasons. And you're looking at that, which is interesting, because that's evidence that there used to be a canopy over here to protect the Lord and Lady as they went down the stairs to the main hall from rain and things. And you're moving on again ahead of me. This is a lovely old room. I've no idea what these holes had in them, but it was obviously some sort of timber structure that went across. Beautiful condition. Lovely window seats worn by hundreds of years of bottoms sitting on them. A lovely staircase which goes up the tower. In you go. It's very, very narrow. Be careful. I think that the room at the top was probably a toilet. And you have a quick look in there before you go left. And then into this, another splendid 13th century room. The only reason this whole building has survived so well is that it never really came under siege, apart from in the Civil War when Charles was having a bit of a battle with old Cromwell. And the troops that were held up in here, when they were asked to hand over the castle, they did. And that's why it was never really sacked, it was never really flattened, and you knew that as well. You've been a bit of a know-all. Those aren't your usual headphones. Give that to me. What? A guide. You've been listening to a guide. Great. Well, if I'm not good enough as a guide, I'll lay on something else for you. You're facing the wrong way. This is what I want you to look at, and it's an early bath for you. In fact, very early baths, Roman baths. Viraconium, this city was called, and it was the 4th largest Roman city in Britain. See those walls over there? The largest standing piece of Roman walling in the whole of Britain, AD 121. I'm going to show you around. All of this area, which has been excavated, is the bathing area. They had saunas, they had Turkish baths, they They had hot and cold baths. They had it all. And who can blame them on days like today? They went from hot to cold. They had servants on hand to give them a massage and also to scrape their perspiring skin. They would scrape with a piece of metal which would get the dirt off the skin. Look in there. That was one huge, great bathhouse. Heated, and yet it did have cold areas as well, so they could do like we do today, go hot and cold in saunas. Down here, this was perhaps taking the cold a little too far. This was an open-air swimming pool. It's not that it went down to the pool, that was Roman level. In those days, the soil has grown up on top of it since. And it was an open-air pool. They filled it in soon after they built it. The snow probably gives you some indication as to why. Around here, the red gravel shows where the roads were. These were the roads. These were the buildings. Sometimes you can see where the entrances to the buildings were. The public buildings were commissioned by Hadrian, who went on to build Hadrian's Wall, of course. And it was in recognition of the local people. It was a thank you to them, really. They did actually recognize the local tribes and their religions, and they all lived together. Now, normally you wouldn't be allowed up here because of the ice, but we've been allowed up. This is a viewing area, which gives you some idea of the bit that's been excavated. And I want to show you this over here. First of all, Watling Road. This was a really crucial Roman road. That's Watling Road. It went right the way into Wales. On the other side, can you see the columns? Well, those were the entrance to the Forum. The Forum, really, was a big leisure centre. Had buildings all the way around it and like a football pitch in the middle. And over there, all of that site is to do with bathing and the Basilica. Well, you've heard about the King of the Castle. Well, here he is. He is the King of Hay-on-Wye, and he also owns the castle at Hay-on-Wye as well. Richard Booth. Your family have been here a long time, haven't they, Richard?
We've been here about 100 years, and I've just been here for 30.
You bought the castle?
I bought the castle for a few £1,000s 30 years ago. I had to make my living, so I really made it in two ways. One, I thought we'd fill the town with second-hand books. The second is I thought I'd become a king.
Now let me deal with one of those first. You turned it into a book town. Why?
Because we're now in an international world. Like Sky Television, things are changing.
Yeah.
And we're between England and Wales, and it's very beautiful. And we've got to do something different. We haven't got the economy we used to have. Yet every year, thousands of millions of tons of second-hand books appeared. Too many ever to go into a national library. You've got to fill towns. Hay starts. 30 or 40 towns in Europe will follow us.
Right, so you give it this centre of books, people are drawn into the town. I'm with that now. Now let me deal with the king issue. When did you decide you were going to be the king of the town?
I was a king because that was in 1977, and Marianne Faithfull was staying with me, and all the journalists were around, and I suddenly said, Hay's going independent of the British Isles, and everybody took it up. I had hundreds of television programmes, Reader's Digest, everybody. I think people want a king. You know, why not a kingship between this beautiful England and Wales, the independent state of Hay? We've got to make our own decision. We're in a new economy. We're in a very prosperous economy. I think the decisions must be made nowhere else but in Hay.
Thank you very much indeed. The first signs of spring. Good old King Richard of Hay-on-Wye. And good old King Offa. As we head south, there's not much left of the Dyke, but it has taken us through some fascinating places, and it's helped us to meet some interesting people. Now, the organisations say that I can keep this old signpost, which is lovely. I get a bit of the memory of the walk. Next time you join us, we're going up to the lakes, where we'll have Mrs. Tiggywinkle, Britain's smallest house, and a rhino's bottom. I'll explain then. See you.
Rex Hunt is here next on Discovery, and on Home and Leisure Digital, it's time to travel to Liverpool for the Close Guide, today tackling the workings of a car.